Welcome to A Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and today we're going to take another wander round paradise. A week on, 2 games of the Japanese tour, and what has that told us about Celtic and the shape that we are in under Brendan Rodgers? The first game, a few concerns, a 10-goal thriller, but let's start with the positives. Daisen Maeda started off down the centre, and that's where he plays for the Japanese international side. That's where he's played a lot of his football in Japan prior to coming to Celtic, but we're used to seeing him as a left winger. He played through the centre in the absence of Kyogo, and he scored a first half hat-trick. Sensational performance. He could have scored 5. One of them was an audacious dink from about 40 yards. So that was a big positive for me. As were the performances of Lila Bada down the right. We'll come back to him. As well as Hatate and O'Reilly in the midfield. I thought they all performed really well. And also, of course, the introduction of David Turnbull. He came on with a point to prove, I think. He has appeared in a list of 10 players that I reckon will be leaving Parkhead this summer. He came on, he made an impression, and he earned his start for the next game as well. What about the negatives though? Shipping out 6 goals. Joe Hart, Greg Taylor, Carl Starfelt. These are the experienced players you would expect to lead the defence, and they made some defensive errors. Alongside Kobayashi at centre half, unfortunately he got injured, and Iwata at right back, and I thought he performed particularly well. So the first game of the Japanese tour, lots to think about moving into Gamba Osaka, which was a completely different game, different type of opposition. But you know, we got a situation where it was looking like a nothing each draw until Bernabe scored that incredible goal. What does that tell us about him? Misplaced pass, he showed drive, passion, determination, and I think he, like Turnbull, will be given some game time under Brendan Rodgers. We've already seen the introductions of Holm and Tillio to this new Celtic squad, and we expect Yang and Kwon to arrive sometime soon. That'll leave us with 2 defensive midfielders and 2 right wingers having joined the club. But a lot of Celtic fans were excited at the news that we were also about to sign Nawrocki. The Polish centre-half from Legia Warsaw will be welcomed into the side, because that is a position at the moment where we are a bit short due to the injuries of Carter Vickers and Kobayashi. And you look at Nawrocki, you think to yourself, he's certainly a player who will be pushing for a first-team jersey. We looked a bit shaky in that first game against Yokohama F. Marinos, and he will be welcomed into the side. And I think this week could be a great week with there being no football until Saturday for a triple signing unveiling. And as soon as that happens, of course, we will be covering it on Axom for you as well. So that looks to be the next introduction to the Celtic squad under Brendan Rodgers, and there may well be lots of interest in other players. One player in particular that has had a lot of interest, in particular from Fenerbahce, is Lila Bada. He's a player who some expected might have left the club, but I am looking at him having come out of the shadows of Jota to be a big player for Brendan Rodgers. And I felt that it was really interesting that Rodgers spoke about him in the post-match just the other day there against Gamba Osaka. Abada, of course, has looked very impressive. He seems to have a freedom, a purpose. He's been playing really directly. And we know what Brendan Rodgers can do to young players. He can revitalise them, he can help them to develop. And Brendan Rodgers spoke about Lila Bada and said that he's a player that he's already spoken to Brendan about his future. And you're hoping that that's a positive. There are clubs, Sporting Lisbon and Fenerbahce, as I said, who are interested in Abada. I think it's so important that we keep him at the club. We were expecting maybe to lose a couple, but we've already lost Jota. And I think that if we were to lose another right winger, that might spell danger, particularly when you see the form that young Abada is in. He's made a massive impact since coming to the club. First 2 seasons, in particular his debut season, but over the 2 seasons, Lila Bada has been sensational for the age of the boy. Full international honours, and I think what Brendan Rodgers will be saying is, you know, you translate that and transfer that into the Champions League this season, and that move that he might particularly look at down to the EPL might come calling at the end of this season. So I think that's a positive that will keep Lila Bada on the books. The other player who seems to have some interest is Carl Starfelt. I don't think we're at a stage where it would be wise to move on a first pick in the central defensive area. At the moment, you've got Carter Vickers and Starfelt. Carter Vickers is out injured. We're bringing in Nawrocki, and we've got Kobayashi and Welsh as well. Now, I think once Nawrocki comes in, you're probably looking to offload one central defender Boston Lawels, the youngster, he came on, he played pretty well in the second half against Gamba Osaka, but most of his football will either be with the B team or indeed out on loan next season. So that leaves the future open, I think, for Welsh and Kobayashi. Which one do you keep? Which one do you move on? It would be unusual for us to move on Kobayashi, but we might do an Ideguchi on him and put him out on loan. Or there has been lots of interest for Stephen Welsh, Udinese, Toulouse, Hellas Verona. So I think the money would be on Welsh, maybe to make a permanent move out of the club. So by the end of the week, we are hoping that our incomings, or new recruits, will total 5. And I think most people will look at them as having bolstered the squad in the first 4 cases, and possibly the first team in Nawrocki's case, because he will definitely be pushing for a first team jersey. But what's also important is that we need to start getting bodies out the building as well. And we know leading up to the pre-season, we offloaded 2 goalkeepers in Vasilis Barkas, tearing up his contract, and Connor Hazard, who signed for Plymouth Argyle. But there are many other non-contributing players who really need to be moved on from the club. And one in particular, he's a legacy signing. It's Albian Ayeti. Now, Ange Postecoglou inherited Ayeti, who had, previously been a prolific goal scorer for Bâle, earning himself a big move to West Ham United. It didn't work out there. We could have signed Ivan Toney. We signed Albian Ayeti, and he scored 9 goals in 2 seasons for Celtic. Shipped out on loan last season to Sturm Graz, and it didn't really work out for him there as well. Now, the word is that Ayeti is refusing to allow Celtic to tear up his contract, and that begs the question, what do we do with Albian Ayeti? If Albian Ayeti refuses to have Celtic tear up his contract, I certainly don't think it's because he wants to prove himself to Brendan Rodgers and push for a first team jersey. I've seen nothing that would suggest that in the first 2 seasons of Ayeti being at the club. What you need to do in a situation like that is get him loaned out, because it's going to be difficult for him to find a club willing to pay the same wages that Celtic are paying him right now. Get him loaned out for the season, and by that time, his contract will be ready to expire. Other players that I've mentioned, certainly on a list of 10 who I think will be leaving this pre-season, check it out on the Axon blog, axon.net, who may not be leaving, are guys like David Turnbull. Now, he's a player who I regard really, really highly. I rate him really highly, a great Scottish talent. But I think that we're top heavy in the midfield, and I'm not sure leading into these pre-season games whether or not David Turnbull would have suited Brendan Rodgers. Well, what did he do? He came on against Yokohama F. Marinos, he scores a goal, and straight away he's awarded a first team jersey, so he's rewarded for his performances, and he starts against Gamba Osaka. Probably the best player in the first half was David Turnbull. Hopefully we can see him again against Wolves in our game on Saturday in Dublin. So he might actually change my mind, and it might change Brendan Rodgers' mind in terms of his future at the club. Do you think David Turnbull has a future at Celtic? Let us know in the comments section underneath the video. And while you're there, give us a thumbs up on YouTube and subscribe to the channel as well. Another player who's already left the building as well is Liam Shaw, and he indeed was on my list of 10 who I think would leave the club. He's joined Sean Maloney's Wigan, and hopefully he can go there for a year, season-long loan, and get plenty of game time. Now, last week I said I nipped into the superstore to see the new Celtic hoops, just to see if they would change my mind when I seen them in the flesh, and they didn't. However, when I seen them being worn by the players in Japan, they certainly did look a bit better. I'm not sure if that's down to my bad eyesight or if they just look better in action. But the third kit that was released over the last week is a completely different kettle of fish for me. I think it's a winner. I think that's the type of kit that you can be experimental on, and I think Adidas have performed quite a good job when it comes to marketing it with regards to the Glasgow nightlife, the vibrant nightlife of Glasgow. I'm not quite sure where the link is, but nonetheless it's a very nice jersey. Let us know what you think about the Adidas jerseys, home, away and the third. Let us know in the comments, and we will be back tomorrow at 12:30 for the Axon Bulletin.